All right, well, welcome everybody. My name's Hans Magleby, and I am the one of the founders and president of the WhyTry organization. We created the WhyTry program and Resilience for Youth, and a couple of other resources that are used in schools all over the country. And we're really excited to have uh, a guest with us today. Let me pull up my slides here again and introduce you guys. So, first off, come on. Now it doesn't want to advance for me. Let's see. Sorry. One more time here.
Human.
That's weird. All right. Nice.
That next slide from your slide deck there.
Let's see. We'll get it. We'll get it figured out here. Technical.
All right. Those are just joining us. WhyTry. We've been around for about 27 years. We do work in about 30,000 schools. We've reached over 3 million students across this country. And believe it or not, the man you are about to hear from, Corden, is a student back in the day that was exposed to WhyTry. And so I'm excited to have him here on with us and have him tell you a little bit about his journey, what he's been through. And he's definitely one of my heroes. You know, I meet a lot of people. I've traveled 7 million miles across this country speaking, and I put Corden in probably one of the top 10 people I've met doing this work. He is absolutely amazing. The real deal. Did a TEDx talk, and it was an amazing, amazing talk. How's it looking, Hans? You good?
Yeah, we're good. I think I'll figure out a different way to doing this. I don't know why it's not working, but I can navigate the slides a little differently here. So, we wanted to welcome Corden. Thanks for joining us today. Corden's going to tell a little bit about himself, maybe introduce a little bit about the work that he does and share some of his personal background and story. And then after Corden, we're going to have Christian, who is my good friend and longtime business partner. Christian is, if you don't know Christian's clinical social worker, speaker, advocate for youth, author of the Resilience Breakthrough. And both of these two individuals are experts in this field that we're going to be talking about today, and this subject of resilience, engagement, understanding how to reach those difficult to reach kids that we work with. And so we wanted to kind of bring together some of these resources that include work that we do with WhyTry, and then some of the work that Corden is doing, our good friend and partner in the New Hampshire area and New England. And so, Corden, you want to start off? Maybe we'll let you share a little bit about your background. Maybe tell them what you do, your mentorship program, and then go ahead and I'll just hit your slides there. Tell me if you want me to go to your slide, that one, or here. I'll start.
Oh, yeah, that's a perfect one. Yeah, we can start there and then I'll dive into it. Well, thank you all for being here and thank you for having me. Again, like Christian said, we go way back to when I was 13 years old, rough, tough, inside and outside juvenile detention centers. Met Christian back when he was writing this on a piece of paper. He would write the reality ride. If you've seen our visual metaphors, he would write the reality ride on a piece of paper. And that led me to where I am today, to where I am a partner with WhyTry. I spend my fun time mentoring kids. Kids who are just like me, who are hard to reach, who were struggling in life, who have horrible, adverse childhood experiences, who are just looking for a place and a time to be seen, to be loved on, to be appreciated. And, I have a lot of great community partners who align that work, who help me meet these kids and make an impact in who they are. So that's a little bit about me. I am a father of three. I have an 18-year-old who just turned 18 on 4th of July. I have a 16-year-old and a little girl who is 11. So a lot of my work is spent being a father, running businesses, and being resilient every day of my life. So we will jump right into it. Again, thank you for having me. And we'll go to the first slide, brother. So I stand here today as an accomplished man, a veteran, a college student, an entrepreneur, a mentor, and a father of three, the last of which I'm the most proud. But nothing in my earliest life prepared me for any of this, and I'll tell you why. Now, it goes back a couple generations, beginning with my grandparents and their 4 kids, 3 sons and a daughter, raised in the heart of Los Angeles, California. They started off well, and in time, they would go through a divorce, and the children would remain with my grandfather. Now, their little girl, who would one day be my mom, was just 5 years old at the time. She felt abandoned by the person she needed most, her mother. And she carried that sense of loss with her for years. It would shape her decisions and eventually her entire future. 4 years later, though, when my mom was about 9 years old, her mother regained custody, and their reunion was short-lived, unfortunately. My grandmother would pass away when my mom was about 15 years old, leaving her to confront with the pain and the abandonment once again without the resilience to move forward. Overcome by grief, she turned to smoking, drinking, and experimenting with drugs in high school, seeking comfort in all the wrong places, getting caught up in a lifestyle of fast money, of independence, and gang life in Los Angeles, California during the cocaine-filled 80s. Around 19, when she had her first child, a baby girl, my mom was still at home with my grandfather. And despite her new responsibilities, she would often leave the kids behind with her grandfather so she could return back to the streets. Her addiction, as you can imagine, became relentless and would continue until she was about 25. By the time she was 26, she started using cocaine, which quickly escalated to crack cocaine. This would cost her custody of her daughters, and by the time she was in a position to do life, things had spiraled out of control. My mother went on to have several stillbirths and eventually would abandon a newborn baby in the hospital. That was me. I was born addicted to opiates and treated for neonatal abstinence syndrome, opiate addiction, a condition caused by exposure to drugs in the womb, where doctors would use TLC, tender loving care, consisting of swaddling, rocking, and skin-to-skin contact to treat this condition. And in my case, there was no mother, there was no father, there was no family to essentially provide that care. Instead, nurses tended to me for weeks until I was placed into foster care. And then I bounced between foster homes, reportedly neglected, abused, and malnourished until I was about 3 years old. You can go to the next picture, brother. I was transracially adopted by a white Mormon family in Utah who changed my birth name and raised me in a predominantly white Mormon community where I faced frequent racism within my immediate and extended family and community, despite the overall efforts of adoption to provide me with a loving home. I can recall special things like Christmas morning, dancing to Can't Touch This by MC Hammer, camping trips, hunting trips, and hours upon hours of church. I've never forgotten my newly designated grandfather refusing to look at me, to touch me, or even to talk to me. And one year I can recall a teenager ran by me and called me a racial slur while they spit in my face after taking my friend's outfit. Not surprisingly, I struggled from the start in my new home and was diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder and ADHD. I experienced several controversial treatment methods, such as holding therapy, which involves agitating one to a point of anger and then calming them down with holding. By the time I was 5, I had developed an addiction to codeine that was in cough syrup, and I would be sent to a state mental health hospital for children when I was 5. Fast forward a few years when I hit 13 through 18, I was in and out of detention centers and foster care once again, attending individual and group therapy right around the time I met Christian. Now, this is where I would say the seeds of resilience for me were planted. I was what staff would call therapized, meaning I'd been in too many sessions and I could tell you anything that you wanted to hear. I recall my therapist, Liz, touching my head and touching my heart, saying, take that from here to here, as a way to inspire me to feel my feelings as a young boy who did not cry. Now, through these programs, I learned how deeply hurt I was and about the coping mechanisms that were sabotaging my happiness. My therapist ingrained in me that we all have ups and downs, yet choices have consequences, and that there are two paths that I can take, the easy and fast or the harder but worth it. And I would say that's when it began to sink in. By the time I graduated from high school, I earned an educational scholarship and was ready to pursue a degree in psychology, determined to become a therapist, just like others before me. While it was a difficult journey, it seemed like I was finally on a steady path. And life had other plans, as it always does. Shortly after starting college, I found out that my girlfriend was pregnant, and we got married because growing up Mormon, premarital sex, and a child out of wedlock was very taboo, hence protecting my family. 2 weeks after my wedding, my adopted father passed away. And my adopted mother would reveal to me a letter from the state of California that I had 6 biological siblings that I hadn't known of before. I remember sitting at a college library and looking up MySpace. And I seen this black face and I sent them a message. Reconnecting with my mother was something I searched for my entire life. I was always searching in phone books, dreaming she was around the next corner, or even imagining that the next black face was going to be family. Now, I was excited, but I was still very hurt because for her, it brought up her past and the shame of abandoning a child and now having to answer to me. And I think as a family, we took steps forward. They were slow and methodical, and other times we had to step back and take pauses. Now, I had connected with my biological family virtually. I had the joy of finally experiencing my own flesh and blood. My oldest son, DeMarcus, who was born in 2007 on the 4th of July. Most beautiful experience. Now, I was one of those parents who read What to Expect When You're Expecting. And when my son arrived, I was more than ready to try my hand at fatherhood. I enlisted in the Army in early 2008 in an effort to provide wealth for my family after losing my job. And soon after, we welcomed my second son, Trayvon. I was stationed at Fort Stewart, Georgia as a cavalry scout. Now, still drawing upon the lessons learned in my teens, the military also taught me the values of loyalty, of duty, of respect, of selfless service, of honor, of integrity, and most of all, personal courage. Amid all this, I received a random message one day from a family member telling me that my cousin had been murdered back in Compton, California. Although on active duty, I was issued special leave to attend the funeral. Now, this would be the first time I would meet anyone in my biological family. I met my mother, I met my dad, I met my 6 siblings, as well as all the cousins and extended family at a few. And I was glad to be home, don't get me wrong, but confused about who I was and where I came from, but also scared to face my mom, as I had realized she was recently going through her addiction when she called me one day and asked me for some money for her car. And I was notified that she was still in recovery. Now, as a Cavalry Scout with the 3rd Infantry Division, 5th Battalion, 7th Cavalry, I deployed to Baghdad, Iraq at 21, and on hundreds of missions saw firsthand the ugliness of war, the strength and resilience of soldiers and innocent civilians, as well as the precious value of life. After leaving active duty at 22 years old, I joined the National Guard as a chaplain's assistant, and I moved to Boston to pursue my life's calling. I went back to school and graduated from Southern New Hampshire University. I have a bachelor's degree in business administration and more recently working on my master's in organizational leadership. Now, during the COVID pandemic, I was furloughed from a government agency and determined to survive and provide well for my family. I invested in my 401k, my stocks, and my savings and started my own business. Now, leaving the corporate world was very scary, as I know we all need benefits, and I needed insurance for my children. But also I needed to find this true calling of me as a father. And by now, I had my daughter, Azalea. At one point in dire need of support, I discovered a Facebook group called Dads with Daughters by a nonprofit called Fathering Together. This was the first time for me where I had a men's-only support group where we talked about being as intentional and connected to our children as we did about our executive-level jobs. This eventually led me to start the Comeback Kid Mentorship Program, which combines social-emotional learning, mentorship, and a community of resources to inspire and teach resilience to at-risk youth, many of whom are transracial adoptees like myself, involved in the juvenile justice system, or everyday beautiful children just like we see every day. In the last 4 years, I personally mentored over 50 youth, being involved from personalized interventions, from group sessions, and serving on the board for On Your Feet Foundation, which provides support to birth parents who have given their children up for adoption. I also co-own Vet Run Movers, a moving and junk removal company that partners with veteran organizations to support at-risk and homeless veterans and provide second chances for felons through workforce development programs. And this kind of leads me to the juxtapose of where Christian and I meet and the work that we do. Christian has led into the 4 sources of resilience. And those 4 sources of resilience, if you don't know them, have led me to be successful, to find my way in life. If it wasn't for Christian and the therapists, see, I'm going to get emotional. I said I wasn't going to get emotional. If it wasn't for people who, like Christian and Liz and Lanice, and all the group home staff who raised me and the nurses who told me that I was a comeback kid, who told me that I was resilient, I don't know if I'd be the same person. And I don't know if I would have pursued life in the same way. I remember losing contact with my parents at one point when I was in the system. As you can relate, those hard to reach kids, I was definitely one of those hard to reach kids. I remember there was a family day that we were coming up on where your parents get to come to the group home. Excuse me, sheesh. Your parents get to come to the group home and check on your progress and your success so far. And I really just wanted to look my best. And of course, with that survival mindset, the scarcity mindset, that day I chose to steal a necklace from the store. My mother dropped me off at the mall, and I chose to I chose to steal a necklace from the store. Now, my mother, who was the most amazing foster parent you can imagine, she caught on very quickly when I got into the car brandishing my new necklace. I had told this big old lie. This isn't it, by the way. I had told her a big old lie that the necklace came with the shirt. And so she had said, oh, well, I want to go get a necklace and a shirt too, so let's go back inside. Right? And I really just wanted to look nice for my parents, wanted to look different. And it just goes to show, like, I got caught that day, and I had been doing really, really well. And that day was a day of reckoning where I got caught stealing, trying to impress whomever. And that was a day that I lost contact with my parents because it was just like that point of being fed up. And the resilience that came from learning to the resilience that came from the pain of my poor choices. And not being able to show that I could work my program, that I could work the steps, was a real struggle for me at that time. So I want to take this time to lead this back into Christian and the amazing work that he's doing, that he has done for me. I'm 37 years old now. To kind of give you this story of, oh, there's my beautiful children. I'm sorry. We'll go through that. Those are my beautiful children. That is DeMarcus on the right. DeMarcus is now 18. Trey's on there on the left. He's 16. And my daughter Azalea is there in the front. DeMarcus just graduated high school, has his LNA. Trayvon is in Southern Utah playing football. He's a sports star, very intelligent. And my daughter is 11. She goes to the Boys and Girls Club, does a lot of drumming. Go to the next slide, brother. This beautiful human being, if you can't tell, is me in female form. That is my beautiful mother. The story behind this picture here, out of those 6 siblings that I have, one of them and I are very close. We hit it off. She'll tell you out of the 6 siblings that she was raised with. So I was the only one adopted out in my family. So they all were raised with my mother, and by other family members and such, as I said. So she and I have been very close. So she flew me home for my 33rd birthday, flew me home to Los Angeles, and I stayed with her. And we went over to my mom's house. And some of you may think, how has the last 19 years been of being with your mother? And it has been a struggle. But this day specifically, when I went home, I don't know what I caught, but I caught some kind of a stomach bug, and I was nauseous and throwing up and all the good stuff. She brought me some medicine, and it helped, and I was able to celebrate my birthday less than 24 hours later with my sisters. And that was like a pivotal moment. Being there in her house, sitting on her bed for the first time we actually cuddled, for the first time ever in my 37 years of life. And that was important for both of us. We got to have intense conversations to where my mother mentioned to me about the moment that she left at the hospital 33 years earlier. And that was a very emotional moment. And I would like to credit that moment in many ways. To this day, when I gave my TED Talk in 2024, my mother was celebrating her first year clean. So I think we're probably 18 months clean at this point. And I would like to think my mother working her program and us having these conversations around our mental health and who we both are at this point, and the transparency and the juxtapose of those has been crucial. So to learn what resilience is, to teach her what resilience is, for her to see the curriculum and how I'm using it now and being involved is a beautiful process. So I'm going to turn this time back over to Christian to continue to do the beautiful work that you do. Thank you, Christian.
Thanks. All right. Let me see, is there a picture of you and me there, all of us there? All right.
Oh, I don't have that one in here. Sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. The if you go back to that picture there, so that's well, first of all, before I jump into this, I just want to say, hey, Gordon, you're a hero for many reasons. You're incredible. You've been a soldier. You're a father. You mentor so many kids. You've helped so many kids around this country, in your community. You're a powerful example to me. But you're a true superhero. You're the real hero. I just saw the movie Superman, and all that's fictional. Every once in a while, you meet a real Superman, and you're an incredible man, and you're a real deal, what I would call a resilient warrior. So nothing but respect to you. What I'm excited about here in the next 30 minutes, we're going to share with you kind of what Gordon tapped into. there is a formula to what he did, and he's very special. But he has two eyes, he has a nose, he has a mouth. He's the first person that will tell you he's not perfect, and that he was given some tools, and we just want to pass those tools on to as many people as possible. Just me and Corden's story have some similarities and quite a bit of differences, but there's kind of a unique thing about our background I got to share with you. I grew up between the 70s, 80s, a little older than him, and grew up outside of Baltimore. A family of 12 kids, 5 brothers, 6 sisters. My parents were pretty overwhelmed with these 12 kids. My dad was autistic. He was a code breaker at NSA. My mom had social phobia, had a fear of leaving the house. So there's some mental health issues as well. So I was a street kid. I could hang out till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning on a school night. Older kids would put all the drugs on me because I was a cute little white kid with curly hair and dimples. I was a special education student. I struggled with math and reading tremendously. And I really never thought I'd get out of my neighborhood. None of my peers had cars growing up. So I literally thought I'd spend the rest of my life in this neighborhood. And then when I was younger, one of my best friend's moms kind of saw I was in a difficult situation, saw that I was out late at night, and she took over and spent an incredible amount of time, helped raise me. I was helped my 9th grade year. My grandparents helped raise me. She helped raise me. Long story short, she intervened in my life, and we were able to impact 3 million kids. And a couple of years ago, she got the National Rosa Parks Award. And so it's interesting. Corden was raised by white parents. I spent time being raised by an African-American mother. So we have similarities and tremendous differences, but we both have a story that, I don't know, I wish all of America could understand that it's not your skin color. It's all about heart. It's all about what's inside. And yeah, he's one of my heroes. Corden's one of my heroes. So I'm a little more emotional myself than normal, so I have a hard time with words right now, just after I heard his story. But I want to share with you where internal resilience. There was something inside that me and Corden were able to tap into. It wasn't outside of ourselves. It was inside. Corden just pointed to his heart. It really took place there. And I had read lots of books on resilience and skills of resilience, like hard work, determination, perseverance. But I really wanted to know where resilience came inside internally, and could I pass that on to a kid like Corden? Could that something that could be taught? And we know, and Hans will maybe you emphasize this too in a few minutes, is we know resilience is a learned skill. You do not have to be born with resilience. So the next slide here. That's one of the reasons I became so interested in resilience. And I wrote the book, The Resilience Breakthrough, which really focuses on where internal resilience comes from. And could we hand someone a prescription for resilience? So I created a prescription. We looked at literally thousands and thousands of kids who had high trauma, like me and Corden, but were thriving. And what the heck were they tapping into when they have high trauma, but they're not hurting themselves or others? Most social workers like me, we pay attention to people with high trauma that are hurting themselves and others. And so we just said, hey, why don't we pay attention to people with high trauma that are thriving? And we kept seeing 4 things pop up over and over again. We saw something called relational resilience. And that just means you go through the motions, you don't give up out of respect for other people who need you and you need them. Corden talked about his kids. His kids were a high relational motivation for him. Here at 37 years old, as he's gotten older in his 30s, he was able to meet his mom. Oh my gosh, when he was just talking about cuddling with his mom at 37, that is relational resilience. I don't even have a better definition for it. The second place that resilience comes from internally is street resilience. And that's where you take judgment, disrespect, and you use it as fuel source. I mean, what Corden went through as a child, the disrespect, the judgment, the racism he dealt with, but he took that anger and channeled it in positive ways, not in ways that would get him locked up the rest of his life. He literally tapped into some powerful street resilience. There's always going to be haters in this world, and to transcend that is one of the most powerful things in the world. And then the third thing you got to tap into to be resilient is resource. And that's where you maximize your talents, your abilities, your resources. And man, what Corden did to do that, to become a great entrepreneur, to what he did in the military, all the resources. He got help from other people. He did not do this on an island. He'll be the first to tell you he got help from other people. And I love how he honors the people that helped him. And then the last one is rock bottom resilience. And that's in your lowest point. You know, you continue to put one foot in front of another. And I'll go into more detail on these in a few minutes. But that's what the book focuses on. Then we have 27 tools to really tap into that. Now, there's a concept about a match I'm going to have Hans share with you that I think really puts in perspective what we got to tap into. So, Hans, you want to take the next few minutes and explain?
Sure. So this is kind of our approach with everything that we do. If you've ever seen our WhyTry program or Resilience for Youth, we like to use metaphors, especially visual metaphors. My background's in art and art technology. I was in a video game company as an art director. And Christian and I kind of stumbled on this approach working with kids where we would explain things using a metaphor, a visual metaphor. And so to explain those 4 sources to a group of kids from our book and try and teach why resilience is important and why those are important, we use this metaphor of a match. Now, if you have a match, you know it's really easy. If you've ever played with matches, it's one of my favorite things with kids. I'll ask them, you guys ever played with matches? and we'll talk about it. I'll say, what happens when you light a match? If it's windy outside, it's really easy for that match to go out. Just a little breeze will put it out. Or if you're just trying to put it out, just a little puff of breath, just a little like that, and it's going to go out. And so if we kind of said that flame on that match represents our resilience. Now, it's pretty fragile because there's not a lot to keep it going here. But if you've ever had a campfire, sat around a campfire, it's a little different. You know, I'll say, can you blow out a campfire? And they'll say, no. I'll say, why? What's the difference? It's the fuel, right? It has a lot more fuel, and so the flame is a lot bigger. The fuel for this match is just a little chemical and a stick of wood, but this campfire has multiple logs here together that are the kind of the base of this strong fire that's going. And so if the wind comes along, it's not going to be able to blow it out. And if you try and blow on it, you're not going to get it to blow out either. Now, if that represents our resilience, then these logs represent sort of the sources or the fuel for our resilience. And that's what Christian was just talking about, those 4 sources: relational, street, resource, and rock bottom. The thing that's interesting is that most of us naturally will tap into one of those 4. You know, there's lots of sources of resilience, but these are kind of 4 universal sources we've identified. And if you were to start a campfire, say you get some little sticks and you get a fire going, and then you just put one log on. Maybe it was relational resilience or resource resilience. You just put one log on, it won't burn very long. In fact, after a couple minutes, those small sticks will burn out and that log will burn for a little bit. And then usually you have a fire that's gone out and you have about a half burned log. But if you want to have a good strong campfire, you've got to put at least 2 logs together. And the more you put in there, 3 or 4, it's going to create a much stronger base because they kind of fuel each other. They draw off of each other and allow that fire to burn and keep burning. And that's where those logs will completely burn up. And so for us, you know, you look at this picture, there's the main ingredients of resilience in this metaphor right here. First off, you have the fuel sources, the 4 sources of resilience. The fire itself represents our resilience. And there's one more important element here. I don't know if you notice what it is. It's the wind. This is what we always say to kids. Look, you cannot be resilient. Corden couldn't develop the resilience that he has today without going through some of those difficult challenges that he's experienced. Same thing with Christian in his life, and his story is amazingly like Corden's. He's gone through some incredibly challenging circumstances. Both of these men here are examples of extreme resilience. And both of them have tapped into all 4 of these sources to overcome their challenges. And so how does that change your perspective on challenges when you think about that you have to have challenges to be resilient or to grow in our ability to be resilient? So I always say to kids, look, we don't want to be like the match that's afraid of the wind. We want to be like the campfire that looks forward to the wind, because in reality, when you blow on a campfire, what happens, Corden? If you blow on a campfire, you ever done that before?
It gets bigger.
It gets bigger, right? So that adversity, that wind, is what creates our resilience. It strengthens us and makes us stronger when we go through difficult challenges in life. And as long as we have the fuel and the sources there, they're going to help us with that. So we introduced this concept of resilience by talking about, just this metaphor, trying to be more like the fire that embraces the wind. Anyway, back to you, Christian. Christian's going to share a couple other principles here that relate to some of the other core principles of resilience that kind of are tied to those four sources.
Yep. I love that metaphor of the match. It really, really resonates with students. They get it. Hey, I got to be living in with that bonfire, not with that match that can blow out so easily. This next picture here, I tied a concept I call flipping the switch. To access this fuel pump right here, there's a switch you have to flip, to be able to access it. And I can see on this picture, Hans, we don't have the bottom part of the picture, but below that is a tank, and it has, it can even represent negative emotions. All of us have emotions, and they can be positive emotions. There you go. They can be negative emotions. Me and Corden grew up with a lot of those emotions right there: depression, frustration, loss, anger, loneliness, regret. I have reactive attachment disorder, just like him. And I have ADHD. I was diagnosed with ADHD, conduct disorder, and severe learning disabilities. And when you have those diagnoses, you have a lot of those emotions: anger, sadness. And I had to learn there was no law in the universe that said I could not take those emotions and create a productive outcome with them. And so to flip that switch, you have to say to yourself, how do I use this challenge as a fuel source? So here's a few steps to flipping that switch. First, you have to be aware that you even have a switch that you can flip. It's as powerful as going into a room that's dark and you flip that switch and that light comes on and everything in that room changes. But again, to flip the switch really starts with a question: how do I use this opposition, suffering as my best friend? I'm going to walk you through a model of resilience. And so the first thing you have to be resilient is you have to have something to bounce back from. You have to have suffering. The second thing you have to do is flip the switch. You have to ask yourself, how do I use that suffering as a fuel source, as my best friend? That's kind of the intro to being resilient. And then we want you to be able to maximize both your positive and negative emotions. And I teach that through a metaphor of a battery here. Hans, you want to hit that next slide there?
Yeah.
Okay. There we go. And so one of the most important things to understand is that all of us have 40 to 60,000 different emotions during the day. Some of those emotions are going to be positive. Some of those emotions are going to be neutral, negative. We all have this gamut of emotion. That's literally the human condition from birth to death. It's just this gamut of emotions. It's funny. I just finished watching this new biography out about Billy Joel, and I didn't realize every single song that Billy Joel wrote was out of his life story. And it's mainly out of the pain that he went through in life, with relationships and family and children and all the different things he went through in his life, and failure and success. Almost every one of them, I'm dating myself talking about Billy Joel probably, but he's pretty universal. So I started realizing, man, all of us have this tremendous amount of emotions. And what if we could learn to create a productive outcome, whether the emotion was positive or negative? So how I teach this to students, I'll say, can you charge a battery with a positive connection? And most kids will say no. And I'll say, can you charge a battery with a negative connection alone? They'll say no. We all know the battery charges because the positive and the negative, both have to be jointly used for it to work. And if you look at the emotions on the left, me and Courtney didn't grow up with a lot of those emotions, self-respect, relaxed, happy, gratitude, hopeful, feeling accepted, love, feeling calm. I'm 55 years old. I still don't feel calm. Hans will tell you that.
Amen.
I didn't grow up with too many of those positive emotions. And I'll be honest, at 55, I still battle them. I have a hard time with trust. I have a hard time feeling happy a lot of the time. And then I'm here speaking to you all today, and I've connected with Corden. Corden did that TED Talk. I think he's been successful from being a soldier to being an entrepreneur to getting his master's degree. because I think he's channeled, and I'll let him maybe share in a minute. I'll ask him in just a minute. I'm curious about this is what he did with his sadness, his fear, rejection, frustration, confusion, sorrow. I believe Corden is on this webinar right now because he created a productive outcome with his negative emotions as much as his positive. Now, don't get me wrong. That boy is optimistic. He seriously, Corden has tremendous optimism, and so he has positive emotions. Don't get me wrong, but I think a lot of his success has come from channeling the emotions on the right. And if you think about it, you have twice the fuel source to bounce back if you can maximize both your positive and negative emotions. If you think about it, if you have to wait for positive emotions to show up before you put one foot in front of another, you're actually at a resilient disadvantage. So when we're realizing now in psychology, we're less and less concerned whether an emotion is positive or negative. What we care about is, can the person create a productive outcome, whether it's positive or negative. I think this is why you see mindfulness is blowing up. It's like the number one mental health intervention tool in the world, because mindfulness is the ability to observe the emotion like clouds going by and you don't react. And the ability to not react for a few seconds, even a few minutes, enables you to create a productive outcome with the negative emotion. And that's why, it's one of the oldest philosophies in world history, and it's blowing up constantly. Mindfulness is being taught in schools, mental health agencies, is blowing up everywhere. And it's this ability to be able to catch your breath, observe the emotion, don't care whether it's positive or negative, but the only goal is you create a productive outcome no matter what, whether it's a positive or negative emotion. And yes, it's much harder to do that with negative emotions. And if you have a really hard time doing it with negative emotions, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, you really do need help. You may need medication. Do not hear me wrong. You may need real intervention. But what we're realizing is, at a very young age, we're teaching kids as young as third grade. The minute they feel sad, angry, or nervous, one thing is there's nothing wrong with them. Well, another thing that's really important is to normalize the gamut of emotions. All of us from birth to death are going to experience all the different emotions. Why do these emotions need to be demonized? And they don't need to be. If you understand how to create a productive outcome, you have a huge advantage. Some of the greatest art, some of the greatest music, I was just talking about Billy Joel, from the play Wicked, the greatest music, the greatest art, the greatest plays, the greatest
Accomplishments in sports.
Yeah, accomplishment in sports are all examples of people taking negative emotions and creating a productive outcome with them. Hemingway took heartbreak. He was in World War I. He gets severely hurt. This nurse nurses him back to life, and he falls in love with her. He never sees her again. He's heartbroken. So he takes heartbreak. At the end of his life, they asked him, "How did you write like that?" And he said, "I fell in love with this nurse. I was never able to be with her again. And I just channeled that pain into my writing." Picasso took the War of Spain and created this abstract artwork that's worth like $1 billion now. Again, the greatest music, the greatest plays, the greatest art. And it's actually what makes us human. If we didn't have negative emotions, I can tell you this. The one thing, I know AI is blowing up and all this stuff now, everything's artificial intelligence. The one thing that humans will always be more powerful than artificial intelligence is the fact that we can have this gamut of emotions, and we make mistakes. The AI is trying to be perfect. And that great irony is, there is no humanity in perfection. Humanity lies in imperfection, messing up, making mistakes. That's the birthplace of humanity. That's what makes us human. Otherwise, we would be a robot. We would be a machine. What is most special about us is that we mess up, we make mistakes, we fail, we learn, we bounce back, and we're resilient. Resilience would not take place without those negative emotions. Hey, Corden, do you want to talk about how you channel some of your negative emotions? Is that something you're willing to share real quick?
Yeah. Negative emotions. When I think of channeling negative emotions, it makes me think about the creed that I once had for myself, right? The affirmation of positivity that no matter what, I would not break. Now, that can be a positive or a negative mindset, but it carried me through great successes. The fact that I would never be broken, that the only person that would break me would be me,
Mm.
Right? That took the disappointment and said, okay, that this is mine to own. I'm disappointed in my mother not choosing me. I'm disappointed in my foster parents relinquishing me.
Mm.
Right. Well, then that just gave me motivation to find my own family, right? And create my own family and be the best father that I could be and sacrifice and build systems that protect me and my children today. So when it's those negative emotions, and again, I'm 37 years old. Some of you know me locally. I've had divorces. Again, I still have reactive attachment. I have divorces. I have my stresses and my struggles and my outbursts and moments where I'm not the most positive or the most encouraging.
Yeah.
And it's the ability to face those things and know that tomorrow brings a better day. And, I think when you break it down on a micro level, it's down to the decisions have consequences, right? And and that even means on a negative, if I'm feeling rejection, that decisions that I choose now, with these young kids now, we talk about crashing out, right? Crashing out when they feel disrespected today. Crashing out is the new version of doing something toxic, hurting someone, going to the extreme, and we all know the consequences of those actions. So to process and having a code for yourself on what you want to accomplish is an ideal way to process both sides and be twice as lethal.
Mm. Oh, thank you. I love that. I love that. To be twice as lethal. I love that. I love that. Hey, Hans, do you want to add something?
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of fascinating for me, this whole idea. If I shared my story, I come from a much more loving, supporting environment, didn't have many of the challenges that Christian and Corden went through in their childhood and adolescent years. Very loving, respectful parents. And I tend to be more of an optimist. Christian and I are old friends from our teen years, but I tend to be more of an optimist. I think Christian tends to be more on the negative side of things. But I think what's so powerful about this is that I see kids today, including my own kids, their friends, students that I've taught and worked with in schools, that when they experience negative emotions, it's like they can't even get rid of them fast enough. They don't know what to do with them. It's like the world is coming to a halt if they're feeling stress, anxiety, any of those negative emotions over there. And in most cases, they quickly will grab their phone or technology and try and sort of numb the emotion by distracting themselves. Getting on social media or doing something else, playing a game or something, so they don't experience that emotion. And the thing that's so powerful about this is the reality for someone like me that, maybe I'm not struggling very much and I'm not experiencing some of these negative emotions, but everybody does. I mean, everybody has moments in your life where you're going to go through those rock bottom moments. And if you don't recognize that there is fuel there that you can take and use it for becoming a better version of yourself, if you can channel it towards productivity, you're missing out. I love this right here. We always say all emotions are fuel. If you're only tapping into the positive emotions and overcoming challenges, you're only using half of your ability to be resilient. For Christian, if you're only tapping into your negative, you're missing out on the positive side. For me, if I'm only tapping into the positive, I'm missing out on the other half, the negative side. And we all need to use all those emotions to become the best version of ourselves. And in reality, it's okay. It's normal to feel angry. It's normal to feel frustration and upset at times. And we need to actually experience those emotions and put them to use.
All right, thanks. So what I want to do now is I just want to highlight the four sources in a little bit more depth here in the last 5 minutes. So relational resilience is, people are depending on me and I am dependent on them. So the more I depend on others and others need me, my resilience goes up. There's a tremendous amount of empirical research behind that. This is a picture of my two kids, Cooper and Carson. If I never got invited to speak again, I would have went to work at 4 fast food restaurants because they need me. I need them. That makes me relationally resilient. Mama Jackson was that relationship for me. Our greatest power comes from human connection. One of my favorite examples of this is Harriet Tubman. We know she freed over 200 slaves on the Underground Railroad. Oftentimes the slaves would want to turn back around because they'd hear the dogs coming towards them in the woods. They'd see the lights coming towards them. And the real story is Harriet Tubman actually had a shotgun, and she'd explain to them, if anybody turns back around, we're all going to get captured. So I'm not going to let you turn back around. And for some reason, none of the slaves turned back around. And he's also the grandmother of my profession, social work. She started the first retirement homes for African Americans in Philadelphia. Relational resilience, again, one of my favorite examples is Rick and Dick Hoyt, who ran in over 240 triathlons together. When he became the lakes for his son, it completely transformed his life. He actually gives credit to his son for inspiring him. And then,
if you guys don't know this story, go look it up on YouTube. It's such a great story.
Yeah, watch there's YouTube clips on it. There's amazing stories on it. I think they're in front of the Boston Marathon. There's a statue of them. Almost this exact picture is the statue on the street there. The next one is street resilience. And I'll tell you, man, Corden is such a powerful example to me of street resilience, is this ability to take pain, disrespect. I'm going to tell you this. I hope Corden doesn't mind me sharing this, but I went to dinner with Corden. I won't tell you what city it was in, but I went to dinner with him, and he got there early when the restaurant opened up, after for lunch or whatever. And he was the first person there in line. And I'm standing, I knew he was the first person there. And they seated like 12, 13 people in front of us. I kept looking at him going, well, weren't you here first? And he's like, it's all right, Christian. Don't worry about it, Christian. And we sat down, and I just lost it. I said, this is unbelievable. I mean, this is just blatant judgment racism we're seeing here. And he just sat there calm and kind of calmed me down and just channeled it and just dealt with it in a really powerful way. And I know he used that as fuel to make more of a difference in his own life and work on these issues. Rosa Parks refusing to sit on the back of the bus. Powerful example. She didn't scream and yell. Corden wasn't screaming and yelling the other day in the restaurant. Rosa Parks wasn't screaming and yelling. It was just the power of just sitting there and not letting hate break. And she's a powerful example of that. Corden's a powerful example of that. Mandela in a prison camp for 27 years, breaking up rock, and then becomes a president of South Africa. And he could get revenge, but he puts a cabinet around him that has the ability. He wanted people around him that disagreed with him, people from all different ethnic, cultural backgrounds, the white Afrikaans. He had them around him. He literally, the prosecuting attorney who seeked the death penalty against Mandela. Mandela invites him to his house, feeds him. He says, look, I made huge mistakes, owns his mistakes in life, and says, look, I'm going to make a difference now. I'm going to create reconciliation. I'm going to bring people together. And the rest is history. When the guy walked out of his house, the national media was there in South Africa. Remember, this is the prosecuting attorney seeking the death penalty against him. He said, this is a direct quote. He said, Mandela is the most saintly man I've ever met. That's the power of taking hate, judgment, superiority, discrimination, and saying, I'm going to be a better human being because of that. And again, I've literally watched Corden do that in a live setting one time. Street resilience, powerful example. Malala shot by the Taliban until she said, until the man who shot me, until his daughter can receive an education, I'm going to speak out. And now millions of young women around the world are receiving an education because of her street resilience. And when we looked at thousands of kids with high trauma, all of them take street resilience. They take judgment. They're maybe the first in their family to go to college. They're the first in their family maybe even to pass the 10th grade. The first in their family not to go to prison. And I meet these kids all the time across this country. And street resilience is something you don't have to be born with. You can be taught it. You don't have to be born with relational resilience. It can be taught to you. Resource resilience can be taught to you. And Corden is a powerful example of resource resilience, this next one here. And that's you tap into the resources, the systems, the community available to you. It could be your iPhone, it could be a library, it could be your neighbor, it could be your best friend, it can be, look, Hans was part of my resource resilience. When Hans showed up in my life, I was in the ninth grade. They shipped me out to Utah to live with my grandparents, and Hans became one of my best friends. And now me and Hans have worked together for 27 years. It might be the most difficult 27 years of Hans's life. And y'all could give Hans a standing ovation. But anyways, that's resource resilience. It's just you got to get help from other people. Helen Keller, powerful example of resource. She just maximized the resources that she had. She had, deaf, she was blind, she had all these issues, but she just maximized those. The next one here is, let's just skip to rock bottom resilience because of time.
Yeah, I'll skip through this one.
Yeah. So rock bottom resilience is at your lowest point, you still believe in your ability to put one foot in front of another. All of us have our own personal rock bottom. If I was your therapist, I'd figure out what the worst moment of your life is, and I'd bring in a cake. I would light candles on the cake. We would have a party celebrating the worst moment of your life, because no one's ever told me what the third option is. It's going to be my best friend or it's going to be my worst enemy. Someone said you could sit on the fence, but if you sit on the fence, you're going backwards. The ability to take the worst moment of your life and say, because of that, I'm going to try to be a better father, a better husband, a better friend. I'm going to try to work harder. I'm going to try to make more difference in this world. That's one of the most powerful things in the world, is to take your worst moment, those rock bottom moments. And, it's interesting. If you listen to Corden's life, and, he was just really vulnerable, talking about some of the divorces he's been through. So, I know he's overcome a lot as an entrepreneur. He's just amazing, but he took many rock bottom moments in his life, and that's what makes him a man today. That's why when his kids get a hug from him, they feel the deepest love, because he really understands if his kids are in pain, he feels their pain. That's why he's an incredible dad. Corden's ability to have empathy, I'm sure, is through the roof. Let me tell you, if I was having a crisis in my life, if I was rock bottom, Corden is one of the first people I would call, because there would be no judgment from him. If I'm rock bottom, there's no judgment from Corden. Again, all of us have that personal rock bottom. When we hit rock bottom, we got to flip that switch. So just kind of the big picture here, the first thing you have to be resilient, you have to have suffering. The second thing you have to do, and this is a formula, this is a prescription, this is like handing someone a pill for resilience. You got to flip the switch. You got to say to yourself, you have to have the challenge. You got to flip the switch. There we go. You have to have the adversity. You got to flip the switch. You got to say to yourself, how do I use this challenge as my best friend? Then we want you to tap into your positive and negative emotions, and you have twice the fuel source to bounce back if you can tap into those negative emotions. And then you have to be able to focus on those four sources of resilience: rock bottom, resource, street, and relational. And then you want to apply, we have 27 boosters in the book, and then you just got to keep repeating that over and over and over. And that's the lifetime of it. And hey, look, if I can do this, if Corden can do this, Hans has done it. Every child in America should have access to this information. I believe one of the biggest social justice issues in the next 30 years is going to be millions of kids are going to get access to evidence-based resilience. And again, if my kids have access to it, if Hans's kids have access to it, if Corden's kids have access to it, every child in this country should have access to the tools of resilience. Hey, we need soldiers. I need a bunch of Cordens out there. I need warriors that are willing to go out there and make sure kids get access to these tools. I want to thank everybody for your time. I'm going to turn the time over to Hans, and we have some free resources for you. I'll have Hans share with you.
Yeah, just a couple things. We have some great resources related to this. If you want to follow this QR code, we want to share with you some resources around what we talked about today. One is we have a free lesson plan of one of our programs for both of them, actually, Resilience for Youth, WhyTry. We also have a webinar series like this one that we do. Usually 2 or 3 times a month, we'll have a webinar where we'll bring on different experts in topics and talk about resilience issues. And then we have a podcast that comes from that where we'll put it in a podcast form. So if you want to listen to those after the fact, you can take those and listen to them on your drive, going to work, hear the conversation, the discussion that we're having around those topics. Another really great resource is we have a parent guide to resilience, which is basically taking our book and these principles that we've been sharing with you today, and putting it into a format that parents can use and that anyone can use, at home. And that's a free resource, kind of taking all these concepts and putting them together in a practical way that can be used at home. And so we just want to thank you so much for joining us today. If you have interest in anything that we do in WhyTry, we didn't really show much today about our WhyTry program. We showed you some aspects of what we teach in our Resilience for Youth program. We also have another resource that is, it's called the Transformational Leader Toolkit. It's a series of staff development workshops that are used in schools to focus on relational resilience, essentially building the connection that we have with our students in a more effective way, which we know is the key to motivation. It's also the most important thing I think that we could be focusing on right now with a lot of the disconnectedness that we're seeing, a lot of the struggles that students are having related to, just feeling valued, feeling seen in school and engaging. It's kind of crazy. Statistically right now, we have so many problems with student mental health. We have so many problems with chronic absenteeism going on around the country with so many of the schools that we're working with and school systems. And I think at the heart of it, it's relational resilience. It's this human connection element that we have to be focusing on. And so we have a lot of resources. If you want to schedule a demo with one of our program directors, they'll show you any of those tools, walk you through them, answer any questions that you have. If you have a colleague or a leadership team in your school organization, we would love to come in or just do a virtual demo for them and show you what resources we have and how they could address some of the challenges that you're working with. Christian, anything else you want to add to this?
Yeah, if you're interested too for your team, this is kind of quick version of the resilience stuff. If you want more in depth on the resilience, or you get a team of your leadership together or something, I'd be willing to do a free resilience workshop and show some of WhyTry as well. So just contact just at hans@whytry.org is the best way to make that happen. HANS, hans@whytry.org, and he can put that in the thing there for you.
You could also, if you want, throw it in the webinar chat if you're interested in that, and we'd be glad to reach out to you and let you know. We'll send a recording of this out tomorrow. So if you have anybody you want to share this with, you can, and you didn't, somebody that maybe wanted to see this, you can share that with them. Corden, anything that you want to share, Corden, about your organization and the work that you do that we can share with our viewers today?
I just put that in.
You put your email in there, which is good.
Yes, absolutely. I can put my TED Talk in there and my website if anybody would like to follow up. Again, I am always doing WhyTry. WhyTry is my lifeblood, if you will. Not only am I a student of it, but I fully believe it. And I have mentors that I raise up on WhyTry who go through the lessons and learn how to surrender the one up and all the beautiful things we do at WhyTry. So
didn't you first go through WhyTry in a detention center? Is that where it was?
Oh yeah. So 13 through 18, I went through. I had to go through this and graduate from it. So
yeah,
awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, life comes full circle. And you guys, we get down for about 5 more minutes or so. If you want to ask James or Hans a question, Hans knows WhyTry like the back of his hand. He literally put it all together. So if you have any questions, if any comments about what we could have done better, what resources you need to help you get some of these tools to your students, to the youth you work with, feel free to ask questions, and we'll stay on for a few more minutes.
One other thing I was just going to say, if you schedule a demo, if anybody is interested, if you schedule a demo, we'll send you a free copy of our book, The Resilience Breakthrough.
I'll even sign it. I'll sign it for you. If it's, but I think we'll send you all an electronic copy of the book.
And the audiobook version of it too, if you like listening.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Thank you, Kim. Grant, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Grant Sparks in the house.
Rosalind, we'll put your email on there. We'll reach out to you and see if we can support you with anything. Thanks,
amazing
Dan.
work
Joshua.
Mount Shasta, California. I have a great story there. I landed there with a 7-year-old guy took me on an airplane ride around California. It's a long, crazy story. And we broke down at the airport there in Mount Shasta. And he got out of the prop plane and hit it with a hammer. And I had to fly back out of Mount Shasta, the scariest time of my life. But that's my Mount Shasta story. I had to share. It's too good of a story not to share.
That was the early days of WhyTry.
Early days of
Resilience.
prop plane, man. They took me on a speaking tour in a prop plane. I almost died.
Absolutely. Before everyone gets up, I just want to say thank you to everyone that is doing this work, that is caring about these kids, that is showing all the love, whether it's your own kids or someone else's kids. Thank you for all you do. We cannot advocate more for this love that these kids deserve. So thank you.
Love that. Thanks, Gordon.
I love it. Keep trying, never not try. All right. That's a good quote right there. Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, everybody. You guys are all amazing, all amazing.
Every day.
We hope you guys are having a good summer break. Those of you that are educators and getting ready for a new school year coming up. It's going to be an important one.
Yeah, it is.
A lot of things going on in this world, and these kids need your help. So we feel blessed and lucky to be able to work with a lot of you, and we learn from all of you all the time. So thank you for coming.